All right, guys, welcome to the first part of our Unit 3 review, which is about culture. So the big ideas or major topics that we're going to cover in this first part is pop culture versus folk culture, material versus non-material culture, acculturation, assimilation, and syncretism, cultural hearths and regions, cultural landscape, housing, diffusion of culture, distance decay, and time-space compression, as well as the effects of globalization on culture. So what is culture? It's really a combination of three things: customary beliefs and values, material artifacts, and social forms. You should absolutely be able to compare popular versus folk culture. Popular culture is large and incorporates a heterogeneous population, which means lots of different groups of people. Typically, mainly exists in urban areas, experiences quickly changing cultural traits, encompasses clothing, music, dance, food, religious practice, and aesthetic values. Folk culture, which is also known as local culture, is small and incorporates a homogeneous population, meaning that they're all the same. Typically, mainly going to be found in rural areas and cohesive in cultural traits, meaning the same. Material versus non-material culture. Material culture are the things that we construct. So this is going to be typically tangible things that you can see and feel. Art, houses, clothing, sports, dance, foods, all of these are aspects of material culture. Non-material culture is the beliefs, aesthetics, and values of a group of people. Your material culture will reflect your non-material culture. For example, the Chinese dragon was historically the symbol of the emperor. Currently, it's used as the symbol of Chinese culture. Acculturation is when one group of people adopt the cultural traits of another culture. Assimilation is the process by which people lose originally differentiating traits when they come into contact with another society or culture. For example, the Native Americans from the 1800s to the 1900s, the US government forced them to assimilate into American culture. Ways that they forced assimilation was through boarding schools, many times where they would take Native American children, force them into schools where they were only allowed to speak English and dress in the more European style. Syncretism is the blending of traits from two different cultures to make a new culture. Most of the traditions we associate with Easter actually come from early pagan symbols for springtime and rebirth. Try to think of some other examples of syncretism. Cultural hearths are areas from which important cultural traits originated. Mesopotamia was the very first civilization, and the reason why it's the first civilization is because it's the first place that agriculture happens. This is where the creation of writing, innovations in mathematics and astronomy, and architectural developments really begin. Then other places where agriculture develops, we also see as cultural hearths, mainly because people now have time after agriculture to devote to these other things. So the Americas, known for building thousands of miles of roads in the mountains. The legacy is the persistence of Quechua, which is the official language of the Incas, the Mayans with their elaborate pyramids, Aztecs with their complex religious systems, detailed calendar, and effective bureaucracy. We also have cultural hearths in places like West Africa, where a wealthy empire allowed art, religion, and other components to flourish. We have the Greco-Roman cultural hearth, most remembered for their contributions to art, philosophy, and science. The Romans with their achievements in government, military, engineering, and bureaucracy. Again, would not have been possible without the diffusion of agriculture from Mesopotamia. The Indus Valley, which we know was an agricultural hearth as well, with communal baths, early working drainage systems, so really the beginning of irrigation, and the importance of agriculture. Northern China, again, one of these original hearths of agriculture with the domestication of grains, fruits, and vegetables. Later dynasties remembered for bronze art, the first Chinese writing systems, and a well-organized political system. The Nile River Valley, with their complex theological, political, and social systems, cultivated a variety of grains and had a complex trade system. science, math, and technological influences around the Mediterranean Sea. So here are all of those hearths we see mapped out. So again, these are not only the cultural hearths, these are also the agricultural hearths, and that is not a coincidence. You would not have culture, you would not have civilization if you did not have agriculture first. Cultural regions are an area that shares a large number of cultural traits. For example, we separate the continent of Africa into North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa because of similarities. North Africa is very different than Sub-Saharan Africa. North Africa has similarities in language, mainly Arabic, and religion, mainly Islam, whereas Sub-Saharan Africa is going to have more of those Bantu influences. So again, make sure you know the different world regions, but also look at this map of the United States. You should absolutely know this map of the United States as well. You need to know where the South is. You need to know where the Mid-Atlantic is. You need to know where New England is. You need to know where the Midwest is. That's the one students get mixed up with a whole lot. Students always want to think that the Midwest is like in Kansas, but that's not correct. That's the Great Plains. So make sure you know this map right here of the U.S. cultural regions. Cultural landscapes refers to the cultural impacts of an area, including buildings, agricultural patterns, roads, signs, and nearly everything else that humans have created. Basically, the human impact on an area. So how have we changed the landscape? What statues, buildings, even agriculture have we erected? And then placelessness is this loss of uniqueness in a cultural landscape. And this is really a product of globalization, where one place looks like the next. The convergence of cultural landscapes. Because of the diffusion of agricultural forms and planning ideas around the world, we see places look more and more alike. Property management companies that have worldwide holdings may encourage the same companies to lease space in all their buildings. Widespread distribution of businesses and products create distinctive landscape stamps around the world. Borrowing of idealized landscape image blurs place distinctiveness. Cultural diffusion. Cultural traits spread from one point of origin or hearth. There are two ways for diffusion: expansion and relocation. There are three different types of expansion diffusion. Contagious, which is nearly all adjacent individuals are affected. Hierarchical, which occurs through a hierarchy of people. And stimulus, where not all the ideas are going readily and directly adopted. Relocation diffusion is the movement of individuals who've already adopted the idea or innovation, and they move and spread it. Independent innovation is developments that can be traced to a specific civilization or hearth. Distance decay and time-space compression. During the past century, the pace of diffusion shrank to months, weeks, days, and in some instances even hours. The spatial extent of diffusion has also expanded. Distance decay, which is the likelihood of diffusion decreases with time and distance from the hearth, is altered by transportation and communication technologies. Time-space compression says that diffusion depends upon the connectedness of places. So through modern technologies, major world cities have become more and more connected. So this creates the infrastructure through which innovations diffuse. So that ends it for part 1 of our culture unit. Thank you.